"She's got a gun, someone call 911. That scream cut through the calm of an ordinary afternoon like a blade. I froze, the sound echoing across Maple Grove estates, bouncing off manicured lawns and white-trimmed porches. It was the HOA president, our very own neighborhood Karen, her voice sharp, panicked, and rehearsed all at once. And she was pointing at my wife. Had only stepped outside to get the mail. The gate creaked when she pushed it open, a familiar metallic groan that hadn't been oiled in years. She was still in jeans and a plain gray jacket, nothing tactical, nothing threatening, at least not to anyone who didn't already have her in their crosshairs. But at her side, under that jacket, something heavy swung. The scream made it sound like my wife was about to start a firefight in the middle of suburbia. Within seconds, 3 police cruisers tore down our street, tires screeching, sirens drowning out the distant chatter of sprinklers and birds, doors slammed, guns drawn, and for the first time since we moved here, I saw what kind of war we'd actually walked into. What the HOA president didn't know, the part she had no clue about, was that wasn't just my wife. She wasn't just some suburban woman fetching letters from a mailbox. She carried a badge, a real one, federal credentials with weight behind them. In the next 42 seconds, everything Parker thought she controlled would shatter. But that moment, it was still to come. When we first chose Maple Grove Estates, it was supposed to be a reset button. The kind of neighborhood where kids rode bikes without fear and neighbors baked pies for each other. Had been through enough darkness already, burying her sister Lisa 3 years earlier, drowning in questions that never had answers. She needed light, she needed quiet, she needed peace. And I thought this place might finally give her that. The moving truck had barely left when I decided to tackle the garage. Dust clung to my boots as I shifted boxes, each scrape echoing in the hollow space. That's when I found it, a yellowed folder wedged behind an old shelving unit. At first, I thought it was just trash left behind. But the name hit me like a fist, Lisa. Oh, sister. The report was marked case closed. Suicide, official ink signatures all neat, but the margins, someone had scribbled notes, timestamps that didn't align, a phone number scrawled in black pen, an area code from right here, our new neighborhood. My pulse spiked, because buried in that forgotten document was something bigger than coincidence. That's when I heard the sound of heels on concrete, sharp, deliberate, like gunshots on the driveway. "Welcome to Maple Grove Estates," came a voice that dripped with sugar and venom all at once. I turned, there she was, Parker, mid-50s, platinum bob that caught the sunlight like glass, cream blazer pressed sharper than any uniform. She clutched a binder thick enough to pass for courtroom evidence. And she looked at us, not like a neighbor meeting new arrivals, but like a predator scanning fresh prey. She introduced herself as HOA president. She shook my hand, but her eyes were on the folder in mine. I caught the flicker, her pupils widening, her breath hitching for half a second. Then, as smoothly as a trained spy, she raised her phone and snapped a photo of the case number, pretending to check the time. "Oh, police documentation?" she asked, the words casual, the tone anything but. I closed the folder, my throat dry, just something the last owner left behind. Her smile was surgical, precise, too precise. Of course, sometimes residents leave interesting things behind. The way she said interesting made my skin crawl. Appeared just then, stepping out with a warm smile, jeans and jacket making her look like any ordinary wife helping unpack. Nothing about her suggested authority or federal training or the grief she carried for Lisa. And yet's eyes fixed on her with a strange hunger. "And you must be the other half of our new family," she said. And my wife replied, choosing my last name instead of her maiden one, a small shield. "What do you do for work?" "Consulting," said smoothly, a practiced half-truth. Leaned closer, fishing, "What kind of consulting?" "Financial analysis, risk assessment." It was a dance, a dangerous one. 30 minutes passed with asking neighborly questions that weren't neighborly at all. Our schedules, our histories, the previous owners, each word, each smile weaponized. Finally, she mentioned it, the family who had lived here before, Lisa, my wife's sister, but didn't say her name with sorrow. She said it like she was testing a weak spot on armor. By the time she left, binder pressed to her chest, I knew the truth. This wasn't just a suburban busybody. Parker was something far sharper, calculated, ruthless, and she knew more than she wanted us to believe. That night, under the hum of our kitchen light, read the report I'd found. I watched her face go still, her agent self rising to the surface. She wasn't welcoming us, whispered, eyes fixed on the page. She was taking inventory. The board was set, and we hadn't even seen all the pieces yet. The next morning, sat across from me at the kitchen table, the smell of bitter coffee thick in the air. She placed her badge down between us, its metal face catching the weak sunlight like a weapon in disguise. "I need to establish authority before escalates," she said, her tone calm, but her hands curled tight around the coffee mug. "Authority," I asked, "or a bigger target on your back?" Didn't flinch. 15 years of bureau training had given her that stillness, the kind that makes other people restless just by sitting across from it. She already suspects. You saw her, she recognized Lisa's file. If I don't control the narrative, she'll invent one, and it'll be worse. I stared at the badge. That little rectangle of power could shield us or destroy us. By 2 o'clock, was waiting by the side path near the garage, her jacket zipped but posture unmistakably professional. From our window, I watched approach. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't surprised. It was as though she'd been standing at her window all morning, waiting for this exact confrontation. "That's quite a professional posture for a consultant," said, voice razor-sharp under its sweetness. Met her gaze unblinking. She said. She let the name fall like a stone in water. I saw it the moment's mask cracked. Her eyes widened before narrowing again, her smile returning like a knife sliding back into its sheath. She repeated slowly, almost tasting the syllables. "Now that name, that sounds familiar. Didn't we once have a family here?" "My sister Lisa lived here briefly," said evenly. "Ah yes, the social worker, such a tragic situation." Grin was predatory now, her voice thick with false sympathy. Then she said it, the word that turned the air between them into a battlefield: agent. They stood there, two predators recognizing each other, and in that moment I realized hadn't revealed her identity, had dragged it out of her. Small world, agent, very small indeed. From that day, the rules changed. No longer pretended to be a curious neighbor, she became something sharper, more dangerous, and she started working her poison on the community. By dusk, I overheard her whispering through our thin walls to Mrs. Next Door. "Yes, she's FBI, sister of the girl. We need to be careful. Government agents have agendas." An hour later, she was on the Smith's porch. Federal employees sometimes can't separate their authority from personal grudges. Best to document everything for protection. And by nightfall, the elderly couple 2 doors down had been warned. Federal agents are trained in surveillance. Do you really want someone like that peering into your backyard? It was precise, surgical, wasn't just spreading gossip. She was planting fear like a gardener sowing seeds in carefully measured rows. That evening, we opened our mailbox to find a letter. Official HOA letterhead, legal jargon that practically shouted its own importance. Property compliance review scheduled due to resident security profile. Enhanced oversight required. It was professional theater designed to intimidate. "She's not just enforcing rules," said, voice flat as she studied the paper. "She's building a legal framework to destroy us." I watched her then, the way her jaw clenched, the way her mind worked through angles and countermoves like a chess player staring down an opponent who just opened with brilliance. This wasn't a nosy HOA president. This was psychological warfare. Day 7 proved it. The attacks came like a storm from 4 directions. A $50,000 emergency fence bill citing brand new safety codes that had never existed before we moved in. Fraud alerts locking our credit, demanding hours of phone calls to clear. A city inspector knocking on our door, clipboard in hand, responding to anonymous neighbor complaints. And letters from our insurance company warning that we were now a high-risk household subject to additional review. Each strike was perfectly timed, perfectly legal on paper, and designed to drain our energy, our money, our hope. Set the paperwork down in a neat pile, her eyes scanning with the precision of someone who'd spent a career unraveling fraud. This isn't random. This is coordinated, professional grade. And then, almost under her breath, she added, "Whoever taught these tactics knew exactly what they were doing." The words sent a chill through me, because if wasn't acting alone, if she had someone feeding her strategies, then we weren't just fighting a neighbor with too much time and power. We were fighting a machine. That night, I couldn't sleep. Through the blinds, I watched moving from porch to porch, binder in her hands, her silhouette lit by porch lamps as she worked the neighborhood like a politician canvassing for votes. And one by one, the houses went dark after her visits. Doors that once opened to us with warm hellos were now closed tight. It was like watching the neighborhood turn into enemy territory. Sat beside me silent, her badge resting on the coffee table between us like a loaded weapon. For the first time since we moved in, I realized we weren't homeowners. We were targets. And Parker, she wasn't done. She was just beginning. The first time I realized we were being outmaneuvered was at the emergency HOA meeting. I walked into the community center with at my side, the smell of stale coffee and disinfectant thick in the air. Folding chairs scraped across the tile as neighbors filled the room. People who had waved at us just a week earlier now avoided our eyes, whispering in clusters, their expressions tight, guarded. Parker stood at the front like a judge presiding over her own courtroom, binder open, pages perfectly organized. She tapped the microphone twice, letting the sound echo until the room quieted. And then she began. "Ladies, and we have a serious matter to address. Agent," she let the title hang there, her eyes sweeping the crowd like a spotlight, "has engaged in behavior that threatens the harmony of our community." I felt's hand twitch in mine, but her face didn't move. What followed was a performance so polished it could have belonged in a federal trial. Laid out photographs of skier, audio clips cut to remove context, signed statements that twisted friendly conversations into accusations. "Unauthorized surveillance," she said. "Aggressive behavior, conflicts of interest stemming from deceased relatives' disputes." Each word was like a hammer blow, building a picture of my wife as a dangerous agent abusing her authority for personal vendettas. The audience leaned forward, fear etched on their faces. Then came the knife twist. "She has admitted to conducting a financial crimes investigation," declared. "A simple fact turned into a weapon. She has the motive, the training, and the authority to intimidate civilians for her own agenda." The room murmured, fear was spreading like smoke in a closed space. I looked around. Neighbors we'd spoken to in driveways, people who had borrowed tools or waved across the street, now they nodded along with every word. It was a trial without a defense, and was both prosecutor and judge. Then Clark stood, a retired attorney, respected, authoritative. For a moment I thought she might challenge. Instead, she said, "As a lawyer, I've reviewed the evidence. It suggests a pattern of intimidation. I second the motion for removal." My chest tightened, flinched just slightly. His voice carried decades of credibility, and in that moment the case against us was sealed. The vote wasn't close, 31 for removal, 12 against, 4 abstentions. We were officially branded as threats to our own neighborhood. Didn't argue, didn't protest. She sat there, hands folded, eyes fixed on some invisible point in the distance. Her training wouldn't let her lash out, not when everything could become evidence. But in the parking lot found us, her voice was low, urgent. "I think I've been manipulated." His eyes snapped to hers. Opened a laptop, her fingers moving with the practiced precision of someone who had spent her life dissecting fraud. "Look at these timestamps, the metadata doesn't match, these photos weren't taken the same day, and the audio files, edited, sloppy but clever." Leaned in, I saw her posture shift, the FBI agent awakening fully now. "These documents have all the hallmarks of fabricated evidence," said, "and I think your sister Lisa found the same thing before she died." The air went still, even the sound of tires leaving the lot seemed to fade. For the first time's face softened, not with relief but with recognition. Someone else finally saw what she had been carrying alone for years. "Isn't just an HOA president," continued, her voice steady. "She's running a fraud operation, organized, systematic. This isn't gossip, it's a criminal enterprise, and she's been hiding it in plain sight." Nodded once, the kind of nod that wasn't agreement but acceptance of battle. Back at our kitchen table that night, laid out her findings. Edited files, false signatures, a trail of tampered evidence that matched the same patterns Lisa had documented before her death. It wasn't just harassment, it was a machine designed to crush anyone who resisted. Stared at her sister's old case file, the notes Lisa had left, the warning scribbles in the margins. She wasn't crazy, she wasn't paranoid, she was right. Closed the laptop with finality. Parker has been destroying families for years, and Detective Miller helped her do it. Hearing his name again made the room feel colder. Miller, the detective who had signed off on Lisa's suicide, the same signature I had seen on that yellowed report in the garage. His voice was calm, but I saw her hands curl into fists. "Then we're not just fighting, we're fighting a system that protected her." I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the truth settling over us. This wasn't about one neighborhood, it wasn't even about an HOA. It was about power, corruption, and the people willing to weaponize both against anyone who stood in their way. That night, as sifted through files, I caught a glimpse of her expression. It wasn't fear, it wasn't even anger. It was resolve. Because Parker thought she was playing chess, but had been building her own board all along. 17 days after revealed her identity, the email arrived. I still remember the faint ding from her laptop, the way she froze mid-sentence while sipping her coffee. She clicked once and her face drained of color. "Administrative leave," she whispered, effective immediately. The words didn't sound real. For 15 years, that badge had been her armor. Now, in 2 short paragraphs of cold government prose, it was gone. She scrolled, eyes scanning the screen with clinical precision, but I could see her hands trembling. "Case OPR 202408847, she read aloud. "Multiple complaints, surrender badge and service weapon pending investigation." I leaned forward, my chest tight. How many complaints? His jaw set, 23 in 72 hours. It wasn't just harassment anymore. This was surgical, precise. Someone had used the FBI's own rulebook as a weapon against her. Arrived within the hour, laptop in tow, she sat at our table like she'd done this 1,000 times in corporate boardrooms. "Let me guess," she said, fingers already flying across the keys. "Different names, different IP addresses, but the language is identical." Handed her the files, eyes flicked back and forth, reading at lightning speed. Exactly what I thought. These weren't written by neighbors. These were written by someone who knows federal procedure inside out. See this phrasing: unauthorized surveillance, conflict of interest related to deceased relative. That's regulatory trigger language. It forces automatic investigation. Leaned back in her chair, her voice low. "Miller." The name hung in the air like a curse. Detective Jackson Miller, the same man who had signed off on Lisa's death as suicide, the same man had called 30 minutes before closing her case. Now his fingerprints were all over suspension. Without her badge, was suddenly defenseless. No firearm authorization, no database access, not even the right to identify herself as a federal agent. Exactly what Miller wanted, stripped of her tools, isolated, exposed. That evening unlocked a box I'd never seen before. She slid it across the table. "I've been preparing for this," she said, her voice measured. Inside were documents, photos, financial ledgers, witness notes, 3 years of evidence she'd collected quietly outside official channels. "I knew Miller was compromised the moment Lisa died," said, her fingers tracing one of the folders. "If I kept everything inside the bureau, he could bury it, so I built my own case, off the grid, untouchable." I stared at the files, the sheer weight of them. She hadn't just been grieving, she'd been investigating, quietly, methodically, waiting for the moment the truth would matter. "You built a federal case by yourself?" I asked. His eyes hardened. "I didn't have a choice. They killed my sister, and they'll keep destroying families until someone stops them." Her voice didn't waver, but I saw it, the flicker of grief underneath the steel. For the next few days, the attacks escalated. Letters from insurance companies, credit blocks, more HOA violation notices piling up like snowdrifts on our porch. Every day, another demand, another weight added to the scale. And then found the thread Lisa had left behind. Buried in HOA meeting notes, she discovered a phone call, 14 minutes long, from Parker's personal cell to Detective Miller's direct line. The timestamp? Exactly 30 minutes before Lisa's harassment complaint was officially closed as unfounded. Pushed her laptop toward us, her face grim. "This wasn't negligence, it was collusion. Your sister didn't imagine the corruption, she documented it, and made sure Miller buried it." His hand covered her mouth. For the first time, I saw tears break through the mask she wore as a federal agent. "She knew," whispered. "Lisa knew, and she tried to fight it." Nodded, "and she died for it." Silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. Opened another folder, Lisa's safety deposit box records. Inside were audio tapes, photos, financial statements, proof that Lisa had been building her own case, proof that she hadn't been just a social worker in over her head. She had been methodical, disciplined. She'd been working like an investigator. Pressed play on one of the tapes. Lisa's voice, steady but urgent, filled the room. "If you're hearing this, something gone wrong. Miller warned about my complaint. I have proof. It's in the box. If I don't make it, don't let them win. Don't let my death be for nothing." Hearing her voice felt like a knife to the chest. Closed her eyes, holding the recorder against her heart. It was no longer theory, no longer suspicion. Lisa had left a roadmap and now held the pieces. She looked at me, her eyes burning with a fire I hadn't seen before. "This isn't just HOA harassment. This is organized crime, protected by law enforcement." And for the first time since we moved into Maple Grove Estates, I understood exactly what Parker had unleashed. We weren't just fighting an HOA president with too much power. We were fighting a conspiracy that had already claimed one life. And it was coming for us next. The bracelet broke the night everything almost fell apart. It was late, past midnight, the house heavy with silence except for the faint ticking of the kitchen clock. Papers were spread across the table, Lisa's evidence on one side, suspension letter on the other, and between them sat my wife, her face drawn tight, her eyes red from sleepless nights. One wrong word from me, one wrong move, and I knew she could shatter just like that silver chain. "This obsession is killing us," I said finally, the words slipping out before I could soften them. "Didn't look up, Lisa died because no one fought for her, I won't make that mistake again." Her voice cracked just barely, but enough for me to hear the woman underneath the agent, the sister who still blamed herself. I slammed my palm down on the table, papers rustling. "And what about us? What about our marriage, our future? Do we even matter anymore?" The bracelet, a thin chain Lisa had given at her FBI graduation, snapped as hand clenched. The tiny silver pieces scattered across the tile floor, rolling under cabinets, bouncing against the refrigerator. I watched them scatter, and it felt like I was watching us break apart in real time. Froze, her eyes fixed on the fragments. For a moment, she wasn't a federal agent. She was a sister, broken and guilty. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered, my throat tight. "You're choosing a ghost over the life we built together." Her breath hitched, and then, for the first time since Lisa's death, her composure cracked. "I failed her," she said. The words came out like poison she'd been holding inside for years. "I was supposed to protect people, I was supposed to protect her, and she died because I trusted the system more than my own instincts." Tears fell onto the table, blotting the paper trail she'd been chasing for years. And then she did something that terrified me more than any of Parker's schemes. She slid a folder toward me, meticulous notes, diagrams, building schematics. "I'm going to break into Miller's office," she said quietly. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. What? "It's the only way to get proof strong enough to end this before they destroy more families. The official channels will take months, years. By then we'll vanish, Miller will bury more cases, and Lisa's death will fade into paperwork." I scanned the folder, surveillance logs, security codes, a plan so detailed it could only have been built by someone who knew how to operate in shadows. "You're talking about a felony," I said, my voice sharp. "If you get caught, you'll lose everything, not just your career, your freedom, us." Didn't answer right away, her hands shook as she flipped through the pages. "They killed my sister, and they're going to keep killing people like her if I don't stop them." For a terrifying moment, I saw it in her eyes, the cold calculation of a federal agent who decided the law wasn't enough anymore. The line between justice and vengeance was blurring, and she was standing right on top of it. I reached across the table, my hand covering hers. "Lisa wouldn't want this. She wouldn't want you to throw your life away." Her jaw tightened, her eyes locked on the broken bracelet pieces still glinting under the stove light. 30 seconds passed in silence, each one heavier than the last. Then she exhaled, long and shaky, and closed the folder with deliberate finality. "You're right," she whispered. "If I become a criminal to get justice for her, then everything she died for becomes meaningless." Her voice was small, raw, but it was hers again, not the agent, not the avenger, just. That night we picked up the bracelet pieces together, one by one, placing them in a small jewelry box. As we worked in silence, finally admitted the words she'd buried under layers of steel. "I don't know how to stop," she said. "Every day I don't get justice for her feels like I'm letting her die all over again." I cupped the fragments in my palm, my voice low. "Justice isn't vengeance, and Lisa's memory isn't worth losing us over." As shoulders shook, tears spilled freely, 3 years of up grief breaking at last. By the time we closed the jewelry box, something had shifted. She made a promise, not just to me but to herself and to Lisa. "I'll do it the right way," she said. "Federal standards, legal, even if it takes longer, even if it's harder, I'll fight them the way Lisa would wanted." Her grip tightened around my hand, and for the first time in weeks, I felt strength returning to her touch. But what neither of us knew was that Parker had been watching, that our private breaking point wasn't private at all. And she was about to make her boldest move yet. It happened on a Thursday, 3:47 p.m., the kind of ordinary afternoon where nothing should go wrong. Kids rode scooters down the sidewalks, sprinklers hissed in perfect arcs, and the air smelled faintly of cut grass and hot asphalt. Walked down our driveway toward the mailbox, jacket zipped but her backup duty belt visible when she bent forward. A holster, a wallet case, a clipped radio holder, Standard gear for a federal agent, even on suspension. But Parker had been waiting for this moment like a hunter, waiting for her prey to step into the open. She went live, smartphone in hand, her platinum bob catching the sun, her voice sharp with false panic. "Everyone, I'm broadcasting this for your safety. The dangerous federal agent I've been warning you about is displaying weapons again, right here in our peaceful neighborhood." Her audience, 127,000 followers, flooded the screen with comments. Angry faces, shocked emojis, words scrolling too fast to read. Bent to pick up the mail, that was all it took. 12 seconds of jacket shift, just enough for to frame her shot and make standard issue gear look like an arsenal. "Do you see that?" narrated breathlessly. "Multiple weapons, she's been harassing families for weeks, intimidating us, and now it's happening again." I watched from our window, my stomach in knots, as neighbors peeked from blinds, some clutching phones, others whispering on porches. And then made the call. 911 emergency, she said, her voice pitched high, still lived to thousands. "Armed impersonator, 847 Maple Grove Circle. She's been threatening residents, surveilling families with children. I'm streaming this for evidence." It was of manipulation. Broadcast the 911 call live, create thousands of witnesses to her version of the story, trap in a box where any response could look like aggression. 4 minutes later, 3 patrol cars screeched around the corner, lights flashing. Officers spilled out, weapons drawn, voices hard. "Ma'am, step away from the mailbox, show us your hands." My pulse hammered, this was it, the perfect trap. But hadn't done her homework as well as she thought. Leading the call was Officer Rick. I recognized him instantly. More importantly, so did. He had worked with her before on a federal task force. He knew her, respected her, and he wasn't about to let a neighborhood drama rewrite what he already knew to be true. His body cam captured everything. At 0 seconds, drop any weapons, hands visible, identify yourself. At 15 seconds, raised her voice, steady as ever, "I'm reaching for my federal identification." At 28 seconds, her badge was visible, clear, undeniable. At 35 seconds, "FBI agent, Financial Crimes Division, verification in progress." And at exactly 42 seconds, officer lowered his weapon, his tone shifted from command to respect. "Ma'am, our apologies, someone reported you as an impersonator." And then he saluted. 3 seconds, a brief courtesy salute between law enforcement professionals, but it was enough. Enough to flip's entire scheme upside down in front of a live audience. The chat exploded. "Wait, she's FBI. Karen just called the cops on a federal agent. This woman's been harassing a law enforcement officer this whole time. Call the actual FBI on this psycho." Smug confidence cracked right there on camera. She tried to end the stream, fumbling with her phone, but it was too late. Screen recordings were already flying across social media, faster than she could delete them. What she thought would be the death blow to his career became a viral vindication. From weapons drawn to courtesy salute, 42 seconds that would be replayed millions of times. And the irony had created her own destruction. She hadn't just filed a false police report, she'd broadcast herself doing it to over 100,000 witnesses. That night, I scrolled through comments on reposts of her stream. People who had cheered her weeks earlier now turned on her with venom. "This is harassment. She should be arrested. Proof she's running a scam." Had built an empire on fear and manipulation, and now she'd set fire to it herself. But the story wasn't over. Because as the went viral, one more viewer was watching carefully. Detective Jackson Miller. And unlike, he still believed he had control. The very next evening, he came to our door with 2 uniformed officers, clipboard in hand, authority dripping from his posture. "Agent," he said, his tone smug. "Public disturbance, harassment of civilians, abuse of suspended federal privileges, serious administrative violations. This ends tonight." Didn't flinch. She stepped forward, holding a folder she'd been waiting 3 years to hand him. "Perfect timing, detective," she said, her voice sharp with the kind of cold satisfaction I'd never heard before. "We need to discuss your role in the murder of my sister, Lisa, and your ongoing conspiracy with Parker." Miller blinked, thrown off balance. Opened the folder, emails, call logs, bribe records, Lisa's final voicemail nomming him directly, proof he thought he'd buried. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. And leaned in, her words cutting through the night. "You think you're here for administrative action? Tomorrow morning, federal agents execute sealed warrant CR 202445 on your office, your home, every device you own. Miller's face collapsed. The officers beside him shifted uncomfortably. Slid one last paper across the threshold, his own arrest warrant signed by a federal judge. "You've been working against me all this time, Miller," she said. "What you didn't realize is I've been the federal investigation this entire time." And with that, the board thought she controlled shattered into pieces. They came at dawn. Not with sirens or chaos, but with quiet precision. Black SUVs rolled through Maple Grove Estates at 6:12 a.m., their engines humming low, windows tinted dark, doors opened in perfect sync, and agents in plain clothes fanned out like shadows across manicured lawns. No shouting, no warnings, just coordinated efficiency, the kind of operation that leaves no room for mistakes. From our porch, coffee cooling in my hands, I watched Parker step out of her house in a silk robe, clutching her phone like it was armor. She blinked in confusion at the sight of strangers walking calmly up her driveway. Then the moment hit her the way their jackets shifted just enough to reveal gold lettering on their belts. FBI. Her composure cracked instantly. "This is a mistake," she snapped, her voice shrill, eyes darting for neighbors. "You can't just barge into my home. I'm the president of this community." But the agents didn't argue, they didn't raise their voices. One handed her a warrant. Another slid past her into the house, professional, cold, unstoppable. And then across the street, a second team approached Detective Jackson Miller's truck. He was already outside, jaw tight, eyes scanning for a way out, but there wasn't one. A federal agent read him his rights, the words flat and practiced. Miller tried to laugh it off, some performance for the neighbors peeking through blinds, but his voice cracked halfway through. "You think you know what you're doing?" he barked. "You think this ends here, you don't know who I." His words cut off when the cuffs clicked behind his back. The sound echoed down the street louder than any siren. Neighbors clustered on porches, phones in hand, recording. The same people who had once whispered fear about were now whispering about, their faces pale as they watched the woman who'd ruled their lives unravel in real time. Stood beside us, arms crossed, a grim satisfaction on her face. "Poetic," she said softly, the queen brought down in her own court. Didn't speak, she just watched, her face unreadable, the agent in her holding steady while the sister in her trembled beneath the surface. By 7:03 a.m., the neighborhood was swarming with activity. Boxes carried out, hard drives, evidence tagged and logged. Years of meticulous fraud, her fake violation schemes, her kickbacks with Miller, unraveling piece by piece in front of the very community she had controlled. The whispers turned into questions. Was she stealing from us? Did she lie about the safety codes? All those fines, where did the money go? It was like watching people wake from a dream they didn't know they'd been living in. The spell had cast for years shattered in a single morning. At 7:19's account, her empire of manipulation went dark, federal seizure notice, every video, every lie frozen as evidence. She screamed when they escorted her out, silk robe slipping, mascara streaking as cameras rolled. "You'll regret this, every one of you, this community needed me." But no one moved to defend her, not this time. For the moment should have felt like victory. 3 years of shadows, of whispered doubts about Lisa, of harassment and Miller's betrayal, all culminating in this. But when she finally exhaled, her hands trembled. She wasn't celebrating, she was grieving. Because justice doesn't bring back the dead. That evening, the community center filled again. The same folding chairs, the same stale coffee, but this time no binder-thick accusations, no presiding like royalty, just neighbors, ordinary people finally seeing each other without the weight of fear between them. Stood at the front, acting as interim chair, her voice was steady but gentler than ever was. "We've all been complicit, we let her dictate rules none of us questioned, we believed her lies because it was easier than fighting, but that ends now." There were nods, hesitant but real, a few apologies offered to in quiet voices. People who had voted against her weeks earlier now avoided her eyes, ashamed. Didn't gloat, she didn't remind them of their betrayal. She just said 6 words that carried more weight than any lecture could. "My sister warned you, you ignored her." Silence, the truth hung heavy, undeniable. Afterward, when the room emptied and the night was still again, sat beside me on the hood of our car. Crickets sang, porch lights flickered in the distance. "She should be here," she whispered. "Lisa should be the one watching this, not me." I slipped my arm around her shoulders. "She is here, every word you spoke, every step you took, you carried her with you." Didn't answer right away. She just stared into the dark, eyes reflecting the glow of the same street her sister once walked down, believing no one would believe her story. And now at last the world believed. But victory has a cost, and deep down knew this wasn't the end. Parker wasn't the kind of person to fade quietly into paperwork and prison walls. And had learned enough to know, sometimes the most dangerous enemies aren't the ones in handcuffs. They're the ones who still have allies waiting in the dark. 3 weeks passed before the neighborhood finally felt quiet again. The patrol cars stopped circling, the gossip slowed, the endless letters from the HOA mailbox disappeared. For the first time since moving into Maple Grove Estates, silence didn't feel like the pause before another storm. It felt real. But didn't rest. Even without her badge reinstated yet, she poured hours into the federal case. Late nights at the kitchen table, stacks of files spilling over the wood, phone calls with prosecutors, strategy sessions with. I'd wake at 3 a.m. and find her by the window, staring at the street like she was waiting for something to move. "They'll appeal," she said one night, voice low. "Lawyers will drag this out. Miller will trade names for leniency. This isn't over." I walked to her, set my hands on her shoulders. "Maybe not, but it's not your fight alone anymore." She didn't answer right away. Her reflection in the glass looked older, heavier. The battles had carved new lines on her face. When she finally spoke, it wasn't as an agent, it was as a sister. Lisa deserved better than this. She deserved peace. The funeral replayed in her eyes, an empty church pew beside her, a closed casket she still doubted, a detective who told her to let it go. 3 years of silence, 3 years of being treated like the paranoid sibling. Now every step she'd taken had proven Lisa right. But truth never comes without a price. The neighbors tried to make amends. A pie left on our porch, apologies mumbled at the mailbox. A couple who had voted for removal stopping her mid-walk, their faces red with shame. "We're sorry, we should have believed you." Listened, nodded politely, but forgiveness didn't come so easily. "People don't change overnight," she told me later. "They change when fear shifts sides. They followed because they were scared of her. Now they apologize because they're scared of me. That's not redemption, that's survival." Her words cut deep because she wasn't wrong. The night before arraignment, opened Lisa's jewelry box. Inside lay the broken bracelet, its chain still fractured, pieces rattling softly as she lifted them. "She gave this to me when I graduated from," said, her voice breaking. "Said it was a reminder that no matter how strong I thought I was still human, still breakable." Her fingers closed around the fragments. "And I broke anyway, I let her die, and I nearly destroyed us chasing her ghost." I wrapped my arms around her, holding her while her tears soaked my shirt. "You didn't fail her, you honored her. Every piece of this case, every file you built, it wasn't about vengeance. It was about giving her the voice they tried to silence." Pulled back, eyes shining with something harder than grief, resolve. "Then I have to finish it, I have to see this trial through for her." The morning of first court appearance, reporters swarmed the federal building. Cameras flashed, microphones thrust forward. Emerged in cuffs, hair unkempt, her face pale but defiant. "I built this community," she shouted, her voice hoarse. "You'll regret destroying me. None of you understand the people I worked with. None of you understand the reach." Her words echoed across the marble steps, and for a flicker of a moment, her eyes found in the crowd. A cold smile touched her lips. "It wasn't defeat, it was a promise." That night, after the news replayed her outburst on every channel, sat beside me on the porch. The cicadas hummed, the buzzed, and for once the air didn't feel heavy. "She's not bluffing," said quietly. "She has allies," was a symptom, not the disease. I studied her face, the exhaustion, the scars no one could see, and the determination that refused to die. "Maybe," I said, "but the difference now is you're not fighting alone, the bureau, the community, and me." His hand found mine, her grip firm, grounding. For the first time, I felt the balance tip, not in favor of fear, but toward something that looked like hope. As we sat there, the neighborhood quiet around us, whispered the words she had carried in silence for years. "Justice doesn't bring people back, it doesn't heal the wound, but it stops the bleeding, it keeps it from spreading." The cicadas droned on, indifferent, as if life had already moved forward, but I knew fight wasn't over. Because even as Parker sat in a cell, her words still echoed in our ears. "You don't understand the reach." And deep down knew the truth, Maple Grove Estates was only the beginning. Every HOA has a story on HOA headaches. You'll hear the ones they tried to bury. Subscribe today.